This is where we have 1,000 people join. We all panic.
Let's see, mute panelists on, oh, I don't need to mute panelists.
Just going to get some water actually, Kristen, if you don't mind.
Okay, sure. Your screen is being broadcast, Lee, just so you know.
Yeah, okay, thank you. No problemo. Okay. I actually do need to get some water. I'll be back in 1 minute. Need to get some water. Oh. The one thing I'm definitely investing in is a really good fan. It's suddenly got mega hot. Hi everybody, I can see we have some early starters. Thank you very much for joining us today. Quick sound check, Kristen. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Excellent, I can hear you too. This is probably the bit where I don't look at how many people are participating so I don't get nervous. Is that the bit? If I recognise anybody's name, then that just makes it even more awkward.
No, you're just talking to a group of friends.
Excellent. I like
We're just
that.
all friends. That's right.
Kristen, would you like to let this run for like a couple of minutes past the hour, just to let people come in?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that, just to give
Okay.
people a chance to join.
Super. Okay.
Thanks, Lee.
Thanks everyone for signing in so far. If you could just bear with us. Thank you.
This is where we need to play the Sojourn themed soundtrack. I don't think we have a playlist for Sojourn, but maybe this is a good use case for one. We could come up with one.
And so what would be your opening tune then?
Oh my goodness. There's just, I don't know. It would just, too hard to say right now. I'd actually have to put a workflow. I'd have to put a workflow together to figure that one out, probably. Yeah, Welcome to the Jungle. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe we can put a poll together and have the audience put together a playlist for us for our next webinar. There we go.
That sounds a really good idea. Okay, well, we'll give it another minute, and thank you everyone for signing in so far so soon. We'll give it another minute to let people join in. Thank you for your patience. And you can also make suggestions about what theme tunes we could use in the chat for next time. Okay, should we roll, Kristen? I think that's a fair time to start.
Yeah, let's get started.
Okay.
Thank you, Lee.
Okay, thank you very much everybody for joining Sojourn's session today on overcoming data obstacles. Just a couple of quick housekeeping for us all. We have a story to tell and a talk track, and there's opportunity for Q&A at the end. We're following a bit of a conversation theme here, so please submit your questions. We can review them at the end and go through things, because it could be that Kristen highlights some of the things you think of during her talk track. You'll also find links to the content, some of the things that we're going to be sharing in the chat as well. So thank you very much. Without further ado, let me set the scene. So overcoming data obstacles is the title, but really this is in relevance and pointing towards improving the customer experience and your business's performance. The start of this thinking for our businesses, we're a marketing operations organization, and we regularly research what's happening within our world to understand really what businesses' pains are and how they're trying to attempt to develop their performance within their marketing operations and team. So I mentioned the report, and that's going to be highlighting some of the talk track today. The two of us on this presentation today are Kristen Connor, who is the Director of Customer Success at Sojourn. She's had a history of working both client and consultant side, and she's a bit of a hidden gem here, which is why I was all for promoting a conversation with her. I think maybe to break the ice between us, because we're both new to this, I could ask you, Kristen, looking at data, what was your first ever project working with data?
Yeah, so you have to go way back, and I'm just going to say like the 1990-ish time period, actually maybe early 1990s even. I started as a bank teller in a store branch while finishing college, and after a few years I realized I really wanted to move from sales and service into marketing, and so I had raised my hand for any opportunities that were coming down the pipe. And I actually was selected to work in a team that was implementing a new account software tool, and that went really well. So within like the next year, I was then selected to implement the new, we called it an MCIF, a marketing customer information file, which is basically a database, a marketing database. And so I was off and running. I got to meet with all of the key stakeholders across the bank's or teams, from operations to IT, finance, legal. I was responsible for getting all the data integrated and then being able to eventually become the owner of the system. And I was able then to, that was before email. I hope no one can Google that and figure out maybe that date, but it was really before we were sending out any emails. So we were analyzing and interpreting the data in new and different ways to be able to run really direct mail programs. Asked a lot of questions and built a lot of good relationships throughout that process. So it was a really good experience. It was enough to cement it for me. I went on to continue that type of work, and then moved in and out of other things before I got into consulting, where I'm at today.
Interesting. I think there's a couple of points in there that I might draw you back to later on. Okay, thank you very much. Well, my first entry into data was actually being in kind of sales and business development roles, and it was all around understanding my target audience and actually being able to truly identify and manage a pipeline. So it's very much working hand in hand with marketeers, but yeah, that feels like a long time ago, and it was just before the 2000s. So yes, we both had a fair amount of time managing data sets. Okay, so that sets the scene for the two of us. Thank you very much, Kristen. So what we're going to do today in the webinar, we want to make it a conversation between Kristen and I to bring out actually the story of why we're talking about data management. So Kristen's going to explain what staying the course actually means. Going to talk briefly about improving the customer experience, and then it is challenging, but it is realistically attainable. Going to frame the data obstacles that we see during that process, and highlight some of the techniques so that you've got ideas of how we think and how other customers are doing these things. We'll give you a takeaway, so something that you can actually effectively use in your day-to-day world. We have got Q&A time, so but please feel free to put things across to us, and we'll respond in kind. So without further ado, staying the course. Kristen, why do we start with this?
Yeah, so getting started into this conversation, I guess I didn't want to just dive right in. I wanted to kind of set the stage and paint a little bit of a picture of what's important to keep in mind as you're considering data projects, as you're considering digital transformation or customer experience transformation projects. And really what it all comes down to is, as I have here, staying the course. And that really means that you're going to continue to do something until it's finished, that you are able to achieve what you've planned to do. For many of us, that's easier said than done. It's a real struggle just in the day-to-day as a B2B marketer sometimes to stay motivated, especially because there's so much change going on, change in our customer behavior, change in the markets, especially this year. So I think that as you're looking to really position data within your organization, as you're looking to prioritize these types of projects that are going to require more than just one or two people on a team, I just wanted to take a moment to share some tips on how some of the things that I do to help kind of stay the course, and these will be applicable as as we move forward into the rest of the conversation. So I'm going to zoom out here just for a moment. The first in really being able to stay the course is that your goals need to be really specific. When you're setting up these types of programs and projects, the goals need to be specific enough so that ideally they can be quantifiable, so that you're actually able to have realistic goals and then being able to measure them incrementally. That's a real big plus in being able to kind of stay the course, again, with the types of projects we're talking about with where data is involved. Making it a priority. We're going to talk a little bit more about priority later on, and as one of the, actually we highlight that as one of our obstacles on a particular topic. But make working towards these goals in this type of project part of your daily routine as much as possible. Perspective and purpose. So it really takes a certain degree of perspective to succeed at any journey. And if you think of the word journey, it really implies traveling along, this path toward a worthy outcome. And most people are looking for something easier and quicker than that. And that's precisely why these types of projects either lag and or just completely fail. So make sure that one of the things here is to make sure you've measured what's at stake, and so that you can keep in mind the benefits for succeeding. And then just real quickly, tracking your progress. Hopefully everyone on this webinar, that's something that we're all doing, is tracking our progress no matter what we're doing. One of the things around tracking progress is actually being able to celebrate key milestones as you've reached them, and being able to share those and really drive more adoption and interest into the project or the program that you're working on there. Hoping to find inspiration every day of some sort, whether you're online or having face-to-face conversations, to be able to keep you inspired to continue to work forward. And then just managing expectations. I think that one of the keys to staying the course, especially as a B2B marketer, is to make sure that you have a realistic set, that your expectations around what you're trying to achieve again, are realistic. Unrealistic expectations tend to lead to folks being disappointed, and sometimes that's because of a lack of communication. Sometimes it's just because the goals and the expectations weren't set correctly. There could be a number of things there, but basically, in staying the course, honestly, I wish it was easier. I wish it was just about partnering with someone, a data firm or a data source, and to build your database up. But when we're talking about overcoming these types of data obstacles, it's just not that easy. And there's definitely a bigger conversation. It's definitely a bigger conversation than we sometimes will allow it to be.
So would you say that's one of the things that are key to leading a prioritizations of moving targets? Could you expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're staying the course, right? So we're, I guess, to the previous image, we're all in the same boat. We're moving forward at the same speed, but what's happening around us is, as I mentioned earlier, our customer behavior and the market conditions are changing, and there's been such a huge shift in what we're seeing this year with the pandemic than what we've seen even previous years. And even then, as you can see from this particular research, this is out of our report, 64% of B2B executives that we had surveyed were reporting either profound or significant changes in their market and customers. This was last year. So if we, I have a feeling if we set this out, there'd be a lot more of that orange. Well, actually, let's see, a lot more of the navy blue in this particular donut than what we're currently seeing here. So yeah, this is definitely something in terms of, with all that change, prioritization is really key to keeping, to staying that course.
Absolutely.
And then back to the bigger conversation. So what I've found in talking with our customers and in looking to help them with data specifically, if the conversation is just about data in and of itself, it's much easier for priorities to slip, for it to be pushed aside, for, you know, really to be ignored. I think what we all have to remember coming into this too is that data is a part of a bigger conversation. So data and analytics talent, the technology and process, that's all, you know, really instrumental in leading into being able to then interpret the data to provide insights, and then providing those insights into these, you know, application engines, if you will, into your marketing automation platform, into your CMS, or, you know, any of the other types of technologies where you're then able to really feed that and build a real slide here saying superior. I like the description there, but building a superior customer and prospect experience. So all of that feeds into that. Without the data and analytics, talent and technology and process, what you're looking at is a less than superior, a less than excellent customer or prospect experience. And having the conversation at this level and being able to measure it like this makes it much more of a priority for the business.
Absolutely. I think actually that's quite a nice segue into thinking about improving the customer experience. It's challenging, but like we know, it can be attainable. So maybe if we could give us some thinking on what that means to be top performing and the things that you need to have to be able to achieve that. Yeah,
absolutely. So, you know, it's a data webinar. What would it be without having, you know, data points in it? So I brought in some of the spotlights from our report, from the research across some key topics here. So top performers, and in our report, top performers were defined as the top 1/3 of respondents because they had either just exceeded or significantly exceeded their top 2018 goal. So those are the top performers. In terms of what you'll see later on, we also have a category called mainstreamers that we're focused on those top performers right now. And 88% of them reported marketing aligned to key business outcomes. So, you know, we're talking there, we have alignment to key business outcomes, meaning those conversations that these top performers are having when they're trying to work through challenges with their data effectiveness. They're not just talking about you know, data being dirty or getting new data or validating data. They're bringing data into the larger context, conversations that, you know, we just highlighted in and around having those insights and then taking action on those insights to be able to create those great experiences. 78% marketing is aligned and works collaboratively with key stakeholders. So honestly, I'm not sure why not all marketers don't do this. It seems to make sense to me in terms of, you know, setting up a high performing team with, you know, high expectations and ideally realistic expectations there, but being aligned, not just within your own marketing team, but within the rest of the organization to work collaboratively. That's a theme you're going to see in several of the obstacles that I highlight, where it's clear that it's a real challenge for many organizations. Mm-hmm. So now the sweet spot here with data, 74% of the top performers report that their data management process increases the value of data in their organization and helps them to achieve measurable results. So again, bringing it right up into the front where these top performers, these folks that have exceeded beyond expectation, their goals, they have this real focus on making sure that data is seen as bringing that value. And then customer knowledge. So that's another, we'll speak to that in terms of one of the obstacles in and around customers. But 72% of these top performers are realizing that their customer knowledge process helps them to identify and share insights from market and customer information. And then to round up, 70% of top performers have a tech management process to ensure that any tech is supported by proper staffing. They have the right headcount. They have the right headcount in terms of the number of resources, as well as the skills and the knowledge and the talent to be able to take full advantage of the tools. So full advantage of the tools includes implementation, it includes enablement, it includes training, it includes integration. So full advantage is not just implementing and then moving on to the next project. And that's what these top performers are able to do, and see really good results with that.
Absolutely. So I mean, they do set the bar pretty high. And so if we take that as the backdrop to where, you know, we're trying to aim to those things, it kind of takes us nicely into the obstacles that businesses face. And thank you everyone for letting us introduce thinking to be able to frame the obstacles that we see, not from our reports, but from day-to-day working and interfacing with clients on a regular basis. So if we start off, and I'm going to circle back here, Kristin, because at the start, it was very clear to me that you took complete ownership of that bank's database. And I think that was quite a remarkable job to do, pre-email, pre-automation. I think it's hats off to the CEO to actually even recognizing that he needed a data strategy without even knowing that he needed a data strategy. So well done you. But yeah, the issue of the ownership, I think everybody will understand this. And when we talk about the levels of maturity in organizations, it can be really definitive, this part around how they're operating around ownership. It's quite simple. The questions we need to be really thinking about, well, who owns the data? It's a pretty basic one. You know, which business owner, like which is it? It could be even a central business or a subsidiary, or it could be cross-functional, it could be different P&Ls, different line of businesses. Who makes the final decisions? And does a customer really actually care about your internal data silos? I can't imagine they do. I certainly don't think about that with the brands I engage with. But I mean, the things that we probably hear, Kristin, I mean, you've had much experience in this.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we turn in conversations with our customers, in my own experience on the client side within the organizations I had worked in as well, you might hear, well, marketing owns the data, or each business team owns their own data, or everyone owns the data. And none of these is particularly, good or bad. It's just that you really need to clarify if you're, within your teams, if you're talking to, IT or sales ops, or even within your own marketing organization, and they're saying, well, marketing owns the data. Well, what data? And how much of that data, and in what systems does that data live? I mean, you really need to start digging down into that. Having the data, having unclear ownership of it just simply means you're really not going to be able to move forward and make the type of progress and make it be something that's really sustainable within the business. I mean, I pulled in some of the report insights that kind of flip the story, where top performers, 26% of the top performers, so those that were at the top in so many other categories, 26% of them, and 60% of mainstreamers being the 2/3 of the two remaining thirds of those respondents, are struggling with existing data management. And of that 60%, 26%, almost half of those have no data process at all. So when I start the conversation with folks, I typically like just to say first, well, who owns the data? And sometimes it seems really obvious, but when you really start digging into it, you may start hearing, it just might take a while until people actually will step up and like really put that name tag on and say, I own this data, this is my data. And then you can actually start making progress. So in techniques to overcome, identification and mapping of data owners. So I'm not even talking about data and data sources here. I'm just talking about who owns these sets of data, whether it's within a formal data governance structure that you may have in place or not. Maybe this is just that first, kind of crawl, walk, run type of approach. This is that first step in that crawl towards a larger understanding of your data, is identifying who owns it, and then being able to move on from there.
Absolutely. You mentioned governance, and I'm sure there'll be a question on that at some point, but shall we move on? Because I could get stuck on that conversation. But thank you. The next obstacle, prioritization of integration. So we have conversations frequently within the business about what's integrated, what's not. We'll ask customers why. We ask ourselves why. And how is it integrated? We hear lots of commentary on this, but I think most pertinently, you've had some recent experiences.
Yes. So I guess I don't think I mentioned earlier, like, data is one of my favorite topics. I'm not sure if that's come across yet. The second to that is integration of data. I'm like, if I have the data, I want to be doing something with it, and it doesn't make sense to me for data just to kind of sit in the silos. And so what we hear when we talk to our customers in terms of why integrations have not taken place, we only had a month to complete the implementation, and then we had to move on. I mean, that absolutely is reality. The person who knew how to do all of that with that system or with that particular integration type has left the building. They're no longer at this company. And unfortunately, kind of tying into that is we have no documentation on how to do it. The person is gone, or they are not in that role anymore. There's no documentation there. So again, in kind of going back into our research and looking at what the report, what our insights were from the report, while 70% of the top performers are doing this, only 41% of mainstreamers are ensuring that technology is properly staffed, are ensuring that when they bring in a new piece of MarTech to add into their stack, and it might not even be MarTech, it may be a system that's a complementary system outside of the marketing ecosystem, but that for whatever reason, it's not properly staffed. They don't have maybe enough people, and more likely, while there might be a person or two there, they may or may not have the right skills to be able to really fully take advantage of the tool. So when we look at a technique here to be able to address what we're hearing and what's being reinforced from these insights, is it comes back to being able to actually have a business case built around, in this case, I'm focused on the MarTech, but new technology purchases. So in that business case that anyone would be submitting for a new technology purchase, it would require that they identify who would own the system, who would admin or manage that system, and in terms of staffing and making sure that the talent, the knowledge, the skills are aligned to what's needed, and that there's also this trajectory that's considered in the purchase. So, and what I mean by that, and I can give you an example, we had a customer at one point who had piloted a multi-touch attribution platform, and they knew they needed it. They piloted it. They felt that it would provide value, but they could not, for whatever, at that point in time, they could not realistically assign any kind of headcount or resource to be able to really manage it. And so that, that wasn't able to move forward. In others, I've seen it go ahead and move forward, but then it just continues to struggle, lack of integration, lack of focus. There's people trying to reach out and touch it to move it forward, but there's no one that is truly that buck stops here owner of it. And so the business or folks may tend to point at that technology to say, you know, well, it's not right for us. It doesn't meet the needs. It's not filling up, you know, a spot in our buyer's journey, when in fact it's, it absolutely could if it was properly staffed and planned for.
Absolutely. I do have many conversations around, the integration was too complicated, or it's not serving our lead management now. Well, but has your business process changed? So
Right.
maybe that needs consideration and then rethinking in the integration. So yeah, absolutely. Interesting. So thank you, Kristin. The next one is organizational alignment, and this is for data. Before people start thinking it's sales and marketing alignment, it's not. This is data alignment, and it does come down to some fundamentals for me. Ironically, it's about building, you know, asking yourself, how are you building relationships? I mean, does your customer actually care who does what and when? No, they want an experience that's consistent and relevant and timely. As a business, how do you measure what is the outcome and what's the degree of the outcome? So it's things that we work on ourselves within our organisation, and it is a moving target because everything's changing. And I guess, Kristin, again, we hear things frequently, which we have to respond to.
Absolutely, yeah. So, and exactly, this becomes alignment within your organization becomes a data obstacle. So that's what we're saying here. We're not saying like your data is not correct, your data is not clean, because of course all that stuff is also an issue in terms of getting to an effective data management plan. What we're saying here is because of your organizational structure and alignment within your teams, it's an obstacle to being able to produce an effective data management plan. So the types of things we hear, I don't have time for that. That team's priorities are different than ours. That's not within my remit. My team doesn't work directly with our customers, so it's probably not, as big a deal for us to do this. Again, it's some of this is kind of legacy thinking. Some of this is thinking that has, really been allowed because from the top down, the culture hasn't been, hasn't kept pace with the changes in our customer behavior in the market. So I go back to the data in our report insights, and while top performers are at 78% in terms of alignment and collaboration with key stakeholders, I mentioned that as one of those points in how they're raising the bar. The mainstream group, 2/3 of those responders, almost half of them, only half of them are saying the same thing. So there's 55% of those mainstreamers that do not have this type of alignment and collaboration with key stakeholders. That is an obstacle for effective data management in your organization, period. So the technique to overcome this, back to the question earlier about building relationships, it is exactly about building relationships. Marketing needs to be building relationship with those key stakeholders, the right people on the right team. And how do you know who they are? You can definitely, reach out and look to see who's doing things maybe differently, who are folks that are seeing some really good results and tracking them that way. But start with an approach where maybe one or two people, you're building the relationships with them. There's a curiosity there when you're building relationships with people that each are curious about the other. There's an element of empathy that you have for what they're doing and the struggles and challenges that they're facing, and ideally vice versa. So if you're not feeling from someone, in this case, that a relationship is being built, if it's one way, this type of technique is not going to work with them. It's unfortunately, this is not black and white. It's a very gray area. I learned about having to deal with gray areas, way back as a bank teller, to bring that back to the picture. but starting with one or two people, the right people to prove the value of this approach. So you're putting in place, realistic expectations and goals that can be measured, ideally quantified, to prove that works, then to be able to have that, expand into the rest of your organization and shared.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's bang on, and I think you were talking something through recently where, I mean, it's one of the hardest elements to be able to work through. And I think one of the comments you used was, it's like building a business within the business, where everyone's got to be entrepreneurial, have ownership, but it takes a little bit of courage to talk to somebody that you need to share, you've got to actually draw a plan with. And I think you were talking about empathy as well, to actually make that, make it salient and make it work, and start from like a common point. So absolutely. Thank you very much, Kristin. Do you mind if I go to the next data obstacle? Or nothing to circle back on, just double check. Okay, right. Okay. So the next one, we've done organizational alignment, is knowledge gaps. And as an obstacle, I think it circles back to the points that you were referring to earlier, where the integration, people need to understand, if there hasn't been documentation, there needs to be documentation, there needs to be a plan around how that is effectively communicated. But there's certainly some of the things that we see around the actual question is, how are you supporting data requests from the business, for example? So do you understand how to do that? Do you understand the ownership? Do you understand the compliance you've got to go through? And that needs a plan. And what are you doing to better understand your buyers and customers? It's not just implementing a new marketing technology to collect more data in one view. But actually, are you providing any professional development to your team if they're taking on new projects and taking on ownership and trying to interface with other team members? Maybe it's not just the I, it's the T as well, so they can think cross-functionally to engage and align with other people. But I suspect that that's not the case with all the customers that we work with. It can be, there can be pushbacks, right, Kristin?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is one of those areas that that tends to kind of go into that bucket of, well, people will just figure it out. So we hear things like, I don't have time for that. We'll just hire generalists and they'll figure it out. And given the technology landscape of 8,000 plus technologies and MarTech stacks growing, and if they're not growing in volume, they're trying to maybe scale down volume, but trying to grow in actual quality, which again requires a different set of knowledge. And another one, we don't have enough work. We don't have enough of the type of work around data and data analytics for a full-time resource or team. And I mean, let's see, how do I just tend to think at that point, then there's something else broken in the organization. There's a huge disconnect within an organization if that's the type of feedback you're hearing, unless there's already this massive BI team that lives somewhere else that's able to help support that. But within within marketing and what they're doing, these are some of the things that we're hearing here that cause these gaps in knowledge, which become these obstacles for effective data management. So going back to our report insights, just looking at the mainstreamers here. So almost 2/3 of that particular group, of that larger group, reported not having the knowledge and skills required to support key functions within marketing. So, it's like, what are we going to do about it? So it's their truth, what they had reported. And so what can we do about that? And what immediately comes to mind to me is that we have to get away from the mindset of people are just going to figure it out, and really invest in enablement and being able to determine, you know, where are my teams at now? Perhaps that's with some type of a knowledge or skills assessment, so that you're able to then prioritize and focus enablement efforts versus just kind of pulling things out of a hat or kind of a pin the tail on the donkey approach, which even then, if you do that, that's better than nothing. But if you go back to kind of staying the course and building goals here towards this particular technique and putting in that approach where you can measure results as you go, and maybe build that buy-in within the team so that you maybe have train the trainer or mentoring programs within your teams. So it's not a wholly, you know, outside investment or a major budget investment, but it's something that you can build into your development plans. And I mean, I could probably speak to this one, I mean, well, as well as most of these for the entire hour. So I'll wrap it up.
with time on in mind, I do agree. It comes in par with any investment in technology or changes in process. You know, you've got to onboard people and do it consistently with touches, so that they feel comfortable and confident. So I absolutely agree. Okay, so the next one is a limited optimization as an obstacle, and things we see are, well, actually, let's ask the question: how do you currently optimize your data? What are you doing to optimize your performance, and why is it important for your customer experience? I'll turn this straight to you, Kristin. I know you like this one.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So I was having a conversation with Rebecca LaGrange, our managing partner in the UK, and she made this statement that I think I need to have it tattooed, not onto my forehead, but maybe like my arm. But optimization is the key to moving from, you know, an execution team to a growth team. And I'm just like 100%, like, totally agree. So when I go back into this and look at, you know, the types of things that we hear from our customers, you know, well, you know, we have a data cleansing program. I don't have time to optimize. There's just too much to get out the door. Totally get that. Been there in that situation too. We don't have analysts to identify what's working and what's not. You know, again, that's reality. But when you look at the report insights, even top performers are falling below, you know, the top third in performance here, just at 67%, where the mainstream group is at 40%. To be able to drive optimized performance using those insights from the data. And so this becomes this huge obstacle. Why would you make an investment into something that you're not seeing and not able to use it to be able to better grow and scale the business? You're just constantly feeding it. You're not taking that and learning from it and applying those learnings to make it better. So again, the technique here, literally a pilot or a, you know, plan an optimization program with one or two key stakeholders. Again, find those friendly faces, find those folks that you're building relationships with, you know, with the obstacle that we mentioned with alignment, to be able to help them determine, you know, what's working and what's not. How can we take what's not working and optimize it, you know, cut it or optimize it to help it to work better. You know, I think that we've seen a recent example of this specifically around multi-touch attribution with one of our customers who was able to go in with those insights because they took the time to apply the insights to the performance of their teams, and they were able to take their Google Ads budget and actually their Google Ads performance and increase it by 30%. So shout out to Progress. Hey, Carmen. I mean, if you're able to focus and realize what is important by having these conversations and determine, you know, what type of optimization is needed and actually get it done here. Again, working in these smaller, this kind of one-to-one type relationships, document and share that to be able to build interest so that others will come on board and look to start making the time to optimize, really not realizing that optimization around data is not just about cleansing the data. It's not just about, that. It's about so much more.
And absolutely, and it's not something you switch off either, because once you change one thing, it's going to have a knock-on effect where you can apply it to other rules or other processes, or you know, it's going to change the outcomes. So it will have a roll-on effects as well with the teams that you're working with, and looking back at everything that we've talked through so far. It's going to have a positive effect. So certainly, I think the people that can consistently do it and put it into like a regular role of reporting back to the business as well of what's happening quarterly, 6 monthly, I think it becomes an effective strategy for the company. So I think we're on to our last obstacle, and Kristen, actually, we probably need to whiz through this one a little bit. Apologies, okay. We're good at talking. So the final obstacle, I'm sure everybody that works with us knows that. Hi guys. An inconsistent customer focus. Now, this is where actually we did have to politely disagree, but you won. This was my original number one, because I felt that it all started with a customer focus, but actually I think you were right thinking this through. It is all about ownership. The things that we have to ask though, I mean, how do you actually identify your customers? Where are they? What are they doing? Are you able to track their engagement through the entire buyer journey? Have you got disparate systems, not integrated potentially? And are the personas that you're looking at actually driving the better results, or have they changed? Has your buyer group changed? Your influence group changed? So those are the things that I find interesting to talk through. But Kristen, again, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, I think we have this, and then we're getting into the quick tips on the data management development plan, and then Q&A. So, okay. I know I talk fast already, so if I now start talking too fast, just let me know. Some of the things that we hear, you know, our data is just too messed up to identify customers and their products. Like we can't build a segment, we can't build a list in our current, in our marketing automation platform, sometimes even in CRM, because our data is just not there. Obviously a huge data obstacle. We import lists of customer data into our marketing automation platform, you know, and just hope that they're correct. You hope that the conversation you have with the folks that you're talking about that own those databases is in line, and that you're both talking on the same page. Sometimes you might be, and you know, other times you may not. Another one, you know, this is kind of an old one we've heard over the years. You know, we have a file full of personas. Okay, like where is this file? Who has access to it? You know, when was it last updated? Those types of things that we hear. Okay, slow down a little bit here. I'm going to hyperventilate. I'm trying to talk too fast now. So the report insights, we talk about customer knowledge being really critical, having that customer knowledge. Our top performers are, you know, just over 1/3 of them, or actually 72%. Are right on target with having the customer knowledge they need. The mainstreamers, only about half. You know, having that buyer journey identified and supported, top performers at 67%, your mainstreamers at 41%. Having those personas that really help to build engagement and performance in your programs. Again, top performers at 76%, mainstreamers at 42%. The big takeaway here is that there's not like direct causation, but over the report, and we'll make sure we get the report out to y'all because I don't think I put the link in the chat. There is definitely correlation between those top performers and what they are identifying as in terms of where they're at from a maturity perspective and the rest of the group. So techniques, starting with your customer knowledge, numero uno. We have to be able to clearly identify your customers and what they own to create superior experiences for them. huge pet peeve when I get information from a brand that I work with and it's about something I already own or something I just bought, or the other examples escape me. Those are two big pet peeves. I'll wrap it up there. I know we need to move forward.
I think that's
we need to have a 2-hour
perfect.
webinar the next time, maybe, Lee. Maybe it's a 2-hour webinar next time. Doesn't it? Let us know in the comments if anyone would go for that. Okay, ready to go.
Okay. Thanks, Kristen. So I loved everything. Thank you very much for sharing all your insights. And we're going to draw it off as a close with your 8 tips for developing a data management plan. I think actually, just to frame this, Kristen, we'll move into this slide. Like whereabouts would people be? Whereabouts would people be from your point of view, like in our maturity model, which obviously people don't fully know yet, but whereabouts would this be as a starting point for people?
Yeah, I mean, right now, because I'm targeting tips for developing a plan, this would be those folks that you either don't have like a formal data management plan in place, or you do, but you're really struggling with it. And that's 60% based off our research. That's, 60% of those mainstream companies are still just struggling even with an existing plan. So some of this might be brand new. Some of these may be points that you currently have in a plan, but maybe you need to go back and double check to make sure that they are really as solid as you'd like them to be. So we tend to start with a data audit, being able to determine what data you have and where it is. After you do that, so we're not talking about quality there. After you do the audit, figuring out what data you have and where it is, then we go into a health check. And that's when we're looking more about the quality, like what percentage of values do you have, especially as we're going into building out like segments and lists. Do you have those key criteria that are really important? Making sure, 1, you have them, and 2, if you have them, you really have them. The quality is high, you're able to ensure that they're going to make a difference for you. And then being able to automate your data cleansing, whatever that looks like for you, whether that's in a marketing automation tool where you're running a washing machine, a contact washing machine, it may be in another tool where you're doing that. And then, so that's focused a lot on your profile type fields, but where you're looking at engagement values, you also want to make sure that you're able to capture at least the high value digital and offline touch points and track those to be able to make sure you're including those in your segmentation, to be able to make sure you have that bigger, wider view and picture of your customers and their experiences with you at this level in your data management planning. You're able to then institute data validation. So whether that's on your inputs from your web form fields, maybe that's your CRM system where you're seeing a lot of data coming in with questionable values. Data validation is key. You can start that, or maybe you just need to expand it. Then you're wanting to monitor your funnel reports to make sure these changes that you're making, you're actually able to start seeing. So you've benchmarked, before you start here, you're able to actually start seeing improvements. And if you're not, you go back to be able to kind of do the troubleshooting to figure out, where is it that this is broken down and what do we need to put it on solid ground. And then you always have to, of course, addressing your compliance support, making sure that you have your legal team involved to make sure that you're in compliance at that very basic level. And then moving forward, compliance just continues to grow as you move forward with your maturity in your data management. That's Absolutely. It, the top 8.
Sounds very simple. Thank you very much indeed.
It is.
Everybody can now go off and complete that. So
Absolutely.
Feel free to circle back in a month and tell us how you're doing, everybody. But thank you very much, Kristen. That was a really informative session, understanding the way you think and how you can help people model their data management. Thank you very much indeed for your time today. We have a Q&A. By my clock, we have about 5-7 minutes left. And apologies, we did overrun. It's the first time Kristen and I have ever done this, so we will expect feedback politely anytime. Thank you. But are there any questions that have been posed? That's what I need to just check. So sorry about this, Kristen. Let me see if anything's come in. Okay. Let me have a look. Okay, so okay, so interesting. Well, regulatory compliance is an obstacle. I think, what's your thoughts on that? What about regulatory compliance as an obstacle? Is that an obstacle, or is it in-baked?
Yeah, and it absolutely can be. I think that, you know, over the last several years, especially with all of the new regulations and now, you know, changes and they're evolving, I think you have to have, you know, talking about building relationships, a really strong relationships with your legal team. I mean, an agency, you know, your internal staff, unless they're like wholly tuned into what's going on in terms of the legal environment, as well as the level of risk the business is willing to accept, then they're not going to be able to answer you as well and as you know, wholly as folks on legal. And I think, you know, our legal teams all probably need some love over the last several years, just because of all of everything that we've been putting on their shoulders. And I know that we've had some of our consultants have become, you know, real experts in some of these topics as well. But when it comes down to it, you know, your business's legal team needs to be able to define what level of risk you're willing to take with some of those compliance issues.
And I think like compliance is by design, so much so now from a data management perspective, just thinking through like the fundamentals in like how you're managing confirmation of contact points and preference and things like that.
Yeah.
It's so important, and there are changes afoot again that we all have to get get ready for. But actually, thanks guys. You guys have put some more questions in. So Kristen, I'm going to just move to this one. Okay, so thank you very much. Somebody's said it's good stuff. Thank you. We're going to show a recording about slides. I'm not sure how we're going to facilitate that, so we'll come back to you afterwards, Kristen. We can work that out.
Okay.
And another question has come in. Okay, for global organizations, do you have a data management strategy in each region or a global one from a compliance perspective? So do you want me to repeat that? Or...
Yeah, so it's like two questions. If you stopped, or a global one, and then we add from a compliance perspective. So, you know, it's okay.
Reverse
it's okay. I just say, so I think you start with a global data management strategy, because there are common sets of data that everyone is going to need to use. And depending on, you know, it's also, there's some dependencies there. Where does the data live? Is it in, you know, do you consider your CRM as master record? And if so, do you have one CRM? Because if there's multiples, or that's not master record is ERP, then there's gonna be some differences, some different answers there. But, you know, off the top of my head, without any other information, I would say you have a global strategy that then you will, you know, obviously because of compliance being different in different regions, will then have their own branches in terms of compliance and what needs to be done, you know, in and around, you know, what's going on maybe in, you know, Germany versus Japan versus California and the US. You will definitely have to have branches of those. As well to address that.
Agreed.
Yeah, great question. I know, it was a good one.
Very much.
I haven't had any coffees for like, I better take a drink of coffee now.
I forget, what time is it with you? I forget. I mean, it's
almost 11 a.m. Central. Yep. Yep.
Oh, okay, but I know that you've been up since much earlier than that. So thank you very much, Kristen. I tell you, we've just got time for one more, but I don't know how long. So maybe okay. So I'll ask it. thinking about the development of a data management plan. Okay. So this question, I think, is they've asked, can you speak to any results your clients have seen?
Oh yeah, so real quick, data management. I do have a customer recently that we had worked with. We were, they identified they were having issues with, various stages of completeness within their data. There was inconsistent approaches, so, alignment issues, optimization issues. So we actually took a tactical approach to build an automated cleansing program, a washing machine within their marketing automation platform. We also built a solution to capture area of interest from those inbound customers to be able to better figure out where they were in terms of their experience. I guess long story short, they had some really good metrics, but I think one of the most powerful ones from that particular, from where they are now, and they're just, early in this new journey here, is that 9% of their leads are now higher quality. I mean, so, being able to go back and report that, hey, not only are we, bringing you higher quality leads, but this is how we do it. And now we have it in place so that we can grow and scale to the business as the business changes to be able to continue to build on that, home run. Great for them.
Demonstrable results.
Absolutely.
Well, Kristen, thank you so much for your time today. I'm grateful for it as ever. You've educated me further. Thank you very much. And thank you everybody that has joined today. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your support. Thank you for the comments we've just received as well. Lovely to know that you've been with us today. Thank you very much. So we will look forward to inviting you to the next session, and we'll communicate with you all, and we'll answer on those slides as well, the question there. Thank you very much, guys. You'll find us all on LinkedIn and things like that. Thanks, guys.
Yes,
thank
you, everyone. Kristen. I'm doing that waving on Zoom. I've heard it's a thing now. So yeah, I'm doing both hands. So everyone have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Excellent. Cheers, guys. Bye for now.